So what we're going to talk about is the Pleo Sanum Power 10 remedies. The reason we're talking about these specific remedies are they're the ones that are most commonly used in most protocols for most types of conditions. I wouldn't necessarily call them the exact core remedies, but they really do represent in a lot of ways a lot of the core to any given protocol, whether there's a few of them in combination or there's just one standing out individually. With the Power 10 remedies, the purpose of putting them together as a pack or grouping them together as what we're calling the Pleo Sanum Power 10 remedies is for those of you who are first getting started and learning biological medicine and learning Pleo Sanum therapy and getting used to using these types of remedies. It just makes it easy. So here's the ones that we're recommending, and these are the ones we're going to focus on for the majority of the talk from now until the end. We're also going to give some practical protocols so that we can put it all together. So once we talk through these, we talk about the sanaceles, we're going to talk about the polysans, and then we'll put some protocols together so you get an idea of what it is exactly it entails to put a protocol together. So just as a quick review, the Pleo Alcala is the alkalizing mixture that we're going to go into a lot more detail about and also talk about how to actually alkalize your patients. And the pH papers are the handy tool for measuring pH values within the body, specifically urine and saliva. The Pleo X drops, they're used for fungal indications. The Pleo Muc drops, as Stuart talked about in quite a bit extensively yesterday, he was talking more about mucorrhesmosis, but the Pleo Muc drops are derived from the mucorrhesmosis, so that's more of a circulation and congestive picture of the cardiovascular and lymphatics. The Pleo Muc eye drops are a wonderful standalone eye drop used for any acute or chronic type conditions. Pleo Nig drops or Aspergillus niger, they are for the more structured components of the body. Pleo Knot drops are for bacterial infections. Pleo Quent is for viral indications. And then the Rec and the Ute are the two bacterial remedies within this combination. The rest tend to be the more fungal type remedies, and they're used for a variety of immune modulation, which we'll go into a lot more detail in a little bit. So there's the overview of what we're going to be talking about in these next few segments of the presentation. One of the things that is important to understand with Pleo Sanum, there's a lot of different avenues that you can get at this therapy. And so I just wanted to outline some of these different ways so that you have an understanding. Nothing is set in stone. There's not really any specific rules. There's a few, there's a few tiny rules, but overall, there's a lot of play that you can use when using Pleo Sanum therapy. And so they work beautifully in acute conditions. You can base it on your patient history and symptomology. So once you get better understandings of what the remedies are actually used for and their indications, then you can match it up with what your patients are experiencing. Another tool, and this is actually a tool that is one of the most useful tools, is working with dark field microscopy or DIAD. And Stuart definitely is more the expert in that venue than myself. So maybe once I finish talking about this aspect, I'll just get him to talk a little bit about dark field and Sanum and how it becomes so applicable. It gives you this beautiful tool to be able to see what's going on with your patient, and then in addition to that, also customize what you're going to be prescribing for your patients. Testing, if you're a muscle tester or an EAV tester or using the Reba device, these are different ways that you can also be checking to see if remedies are relevant for patients. We've talked a lot and very extensively in the past about Dr. Wertman's 4-step approach, and this is where you're taking, step 1 is looking at milieu modulation. Step 2 is in decreasing inflammatory processes. Step 3 is using the basics with Pleo Muc and Pleo Nig, and step 4 is the immunobiologicals. There is a lot of materials that are available. Dr. Wertman has written quite a few books, and a lot of our past material has also been based on that. We have taken the liberty to actually extend it and embrace a little bit further than just the 4 steps with the logic of biological therapy. So that was the working from outside in diagram. And so essentially it's taking the Dr. Wertman 4-step approach, but not having it such a rigid, structured type process.
And also explicitly adding the need to do organ support and critical elimination channel support, which is implicit in the 4 steps of Dr. Wertman's, but we've called it out explicitly, which is why we have 5 steps. Otherwise, it's actually quite similar.
Exactly. And the other thing, too, it's very important, in the 4 steps, it's not necessarily talked about per se about that elimination need, but we all know in practice that it's actually very important to open up those emunctories so our patients aren't getting healing crises, if you want to call it that. And then finally we have protocols. Protocols for beginners is very easy. Protocols for non-beginners, people who are very well versed in Sanum, it also makes it very easy. And so with our teachings at the end and when we're putting it all together, we are going to be putting it in a protocol-based form. So it gives you a guideline as to what you need to do, what types of steps you need to do, suggestions of remedies that you can be using in certain types of conditions. Mind you, those remedies are not necessarily the only ones that you can use. There's always the ability to massage and individualize each protocol and each approach. So
I want to just add a couple of
sure,
things
please.
if you want to step back.
Oh yes, the dark field slide. Okay.
Well,
so.
a couple things I want to say. First of all, from my perspective, the greatest power of this type of medicine is the ability to profoundly change the foundation on which the human physiology rests and be able to get down into the chronic conditions. But as you've said, this is also very suitable for many acute conditions. So on the previous slide, we looked at the Pleo eye drops. I've had people in the clinics where I've worked who've come in and who are not, for instance, able to drive anymore because they go out at night and the headlights all turn into stars. They're starting to get sclerification in the cornea. In some cases, 1 or 2 drops, literally 1 or 2 days of using the Pleo eye drops, and that's all gone away. So sometimes you see very, very rapid addressing of acute conditions as well. Dark field microscopy is a remarkable tool. We talked about it a little bit in terms of how Dr. Enderlein began exploring the world of pleomorphic transformation and discovering isopathic regression. Dark field is beautiful because it allows you to see the evolving state of the blood and by inference processes taking place all throughout the compartments of the body in real time. It allows you to make determinations of what's happening, where blockages are, where there are dysfunctional processes, and during the course of therapy, it allows you to show the transformations that are taking place. This is tremendous for the practitioner. It's also tremendous for the patient because they get an opportunity to see in a very tangible, very palpable way the healing changes that are taking place in their bodies, even if at a symptomatic level they're still in distress and haven't caught up. They can very clearly see the changes that are taking place. One of the limitations of traditional dark field microscopy, traditional live blood analysis, is that it doesn't directly give you information about the appropriate remedies to use. 15 years ago, I created an extended discipline of dark field live blood analysis I call dyad microscopy. It stands for Differential Isopathic Assessment in Dark Field. And what it does is it allows you to empirically read the individual's specific responses to different isopathic remedies and find where the current focus of dysregulation is most profound, where the best places are to put the levers to begin shifting the interior terrain of the body in terms of milieu modulation and in terms of using the isopathic therapies. One other thing I want to make clear is that although we talk about the isopathic, the Enderlein remedies being transformative, and we call them fungal remedies because the colloids, the restorative colloids that we put back into the body are derived from the highest form, the culminant form of the fungus, that doesn't mean that they're only appropriate for treating fungal infections.
Okay.
They're appropriate for treating all of the different potential forms of dysregulation at all of the different pathogenic cycle stages within the cyclode that culminates in that fungal form. So when we talk about Penicillium notatum or mucorosmosis, those are the names of the most biologically complex forms in that pleomorphic family. It is from those forms breaking down that we derive the non-pathogenic restorative regulatory colloids, but they will work on down-regulating the disturbances at all of the different possible stages within the cyclode.
Exactly. And so then to take the theoretical aspect that Stuart just mentioned and make it more practical, when we talk about the individual remedies, we are going to be noting conditions and indications and things as to where to use the remedies. So in some sense, if it says strep throat, and you don't necessarily need to know exactly what's happening within the body, but knowing that that's the remedy that you can use specifically for that condition.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing. In my experience of working with this extensively for more than 15 years, I have come to observe that every one of the isopathic remedies, the key shifter remedies, has both a short-acting immunomodulation component and a longer-acting developmental isopathic component that changes the cyclode relationships inside of the body. And when people do bioenergetic testing, whether they do it directly through muscle testing, kinesiologically, or you use a machine that does some sort of point testing, however you go about doing that, in my experience, the part that tests most strongly is the short-acting immunomodulator part. And to the extent that that short-acting component, that immediately present component, is a reflection of the same needs the body has for the isopathic part, it's an accurate testing method. And some people are very skilled testers. But sometimes I've had people tell me, well, I do muscle testing and I didn't get a terrific response off of these isopathic remedies, so I don't use them. And I believe what's happening in those cases, if these people really are good testers and are skilled at what they do, and in general I have no reason to doubt that, is that they are not getting a read on the slow-acting part that over a period of days and weeks and months shifts the terrain. The analogy I've used in the classes that I teach about this is if I'm NASA and I'm sending a space mission to the moon, I don't aim at where the moon is today, because by the time my space capsule reaches there, the moon will have moved someplace else. I have to compute how long it's going to take there, and I have to aim into empty space at the place where the two will rendezvous. Since these are transformations that really take hours and days and sometimes weeks and months to work the different stages of transformation into the regulatory forms in the body, you may not get a terrific muscle test response. So again, to the extent to which the immunomodulator part matches the body's need for the longer term part, it does turn up. But if you're not getting fabulous results with that, this may be the reason why.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so then let's talk about the protocols. Just this may be for many common sense, but let's just talk about why somebody would want to use a protocol, especially somebody who is just entering into the world of Pleo Sanum therapy and beginning your journey with these fabulous remedies. So with the protocols, benefits, it's a very systematic approach, so you know exactly what steps you're going to be taking and timing to some degree about what you're going to be doing. It's easy to use, and everyone benefits. Regardless of it's a remedy that is necessary for that person or not, and perhaps let's say you choose the wrong remedy, but in an isopathic world there isn't really such a thing as choosing the wrong remedy. You may not see the direct benefits, but regardless, on some level, when we're changing the terrain and we're modulating and working with the milieu and the microorganisms, in the end everybody benefits. There's 30 plus years of practical experience from experts. And so this is really where the protocols have a lot of strength. We're not just sitting and creating things out of thin air. This is experience that has gone past, not just for long-term practitioners both in Canada and North America, but back into Europe and back into Germany, where German biological medicine and European biological medicine has such strong foundations. You in the end, basically know what to expect with a treatment, and you have a desired outcome and are able to work towards that goal. And then finally, it's a great way to learn how Pleo Sanum therapy works without the trial and error method. So this is one of the reasons why we are going to be talking about protocols in this format today.